I told you this morning that tonight was my testimony for the missions trip, and I wasn't kidding. I was kidding about the part where I like to take an hour, kind of. Anyway, because, like I said, even when I go down there, I may go down there as a leader or as the driver, and that's really why Dylan makes me go, is because he needs drivers, and I don't mind driving. I don't like it, but I'll do it anyway. And but I still, when I go down there, it's not just me watching out over the teenagers or, in a lot of cases, watching out over the adults on the trip. It's still, Lord, what would you have me? What do you want to teach me? Because I believe every day the Lord wants to teach me something. And and I love that trip, because if you've never been down to BPS, I will tell you it is on the backside of the desert. It really is. And but every morning I love to get up and I go for a walk out in the desert. It's still kind of cool, just me and the rattlesnakes and the scorpions and whatever else might be living out there, and just walk around and I visit with God and talk to him. And I try to look to gain something. And every year we go down there and we go into Juarez most of the time. And people will always look at you and think, man, you are crazy going into Juarez. And I think, well, we're going with God. One, we're going with the group that knows what they're doing, but we're going with God. And why would not God protect us? And it's so funny, every time when you go down there, and they have, Thursday is always testimony time for the entire group, and they get up, and you always have people talk about how they've been taken out of their comfort zone. And you know what really came home to me was how odd that sounds as a Christian. I'm going to do something for God, and that is outside of my comfort zone. If I'm doing something for God, that should be in my comfort zone, and anything I'm not doing for God should be outside of my comfort zone. And that's just what hit me. And I got to really thinking about that and looking on that and thinking, what is it truly that we're saying? Is that we allow things to cause us to fear, and that fear keeps us from doing what God wants us to do. And we have to get past that and not let fear ever stop us. If God needs us to do something, we need to just say, all right, Lord, let's go. Don't know what's going to happen, don't know how it's going to play out, but I know you're involved. So let's go do it. And it just really struck me. Now, I've been on missions trip. Yeah, I guess I should have started. Hi, my name's Darin. This was my 15th time going down. I don't know how many times I've been down there, but I've been down there a few. And again, and it's just it's amazing. But I've never really felt uncomfortable. And I'm not. This isn't a Darin thing. I always felt like that if God took me down there, and I believe He took me down there. If He didn't want me down there, He wouldn't have had me gone. They would have found somebody else to drive. So for whatever reason, He keeps taking me, and I'll keep going. But I don't feel out of place, even though I can't speak the language. I've tried to learn it. I learned a phrase while I was down there, and I forgot to brush up on it so I could give it while I got back here. And I apologize for that, because it was a beautiful phrase, and it helped me out immensely. And it was basically just asking, is there pudding in that donut? And pudding, that's how you say it in Spanish, pudding. And but no. But I mean, we learned various phrases, and it's just always a good time. But tonight I want to look at that, and I want to look at 5 people in the Bible who did not let fear or stepping out of their comfort zone stop them, and what it did for you and I and for them. So 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. God has given us the mind to be able to do it. And He says, listen, I haven't given you fear. Don't let fear ever stop you from doing things for me. Don't let fear stop you from teaching. Don't let fear stop you from preaching the Word of God. Don't let fear ever stop you from going somewhere. If I've asked you to go, I'll take care of you. I mean, whenever we go on a missions trip or we're doing something for God, even if it's just going out into the neighborhoods and knocking on doors, it should be the comfort of being in your mother's arms and knowing that nothing's going to happen to me because my Lord is taking care of me and not worry about anything. Are we alert? Sure. When I'm down there, am I keeping an eye on everybody? Sure I am. Why? Because we're not always that smart. So somebody's got to keep an eye on it. And I pray that somebody keeps an eye on me as well. But it's not about what the world is going to do to us, but is what can we take to the world? And that's what those trips are all about. And I love to see the kids go down there and be a part and go out there and walk around and not let anything stop them from sharing the Word of God. So, again, not letting fear. So, again, I want to look at it, like I said, 5 people who didn't let things stop them. So, first person, let's look at Abraham, the father of faith. Turn to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. And this story always gets me. Because, I mean, if you're going to ask somebody to go somewhere, what is usually their first question? Where are we going? Hey, you want to go with me? Where are we going? I mean, if I ask one of my granddaughter, you want to go with me? Where are you going? If Pastor Jerry asked me during the day, hey, you want to go with me? Where are you going? Because that depends on if we're going to go. Well, I'm going to go to the dump. Hey, just soon not. Thank you for asking, though. Especially during the summer, because it's not good. Let's just say when we went to the dump last week, me and Pastor Jerry, and he pitched out a bag and something flew onto his arm, and I thought he was going to lose it on me. Rightfully so, and he just told me, I'm gonna pretend that is chocolate milk, that brown substance that landed on me. And I just said, you can do whatever you want, but don't touch me. But that's our first question. Why? Because that dictates what we're going to do. Instead of just saying, Lord, if you're asking me to go, then let's go. But in Genesis 12, verse 1, it says, Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham departed, and as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So here he is. God said, Abram, I need you to pack up, you and your family, and go. He didn't say, Lord, where are we going? He just went. And there's times, again, that God is going to want people to go. We've sent people out. And you know what? Sometimes it's, in the beginning, they don't know where they're going. All they know is that God wants them to go, and they're going to go. And then God starts working on their heart. Because before he can get them the place, he has to get them to the place of obedience. You know what? I'll let you know where you're going to go, but I need your heart just to say, Lord, I'll go wherever. If you tell me to go, I'll go. We came off the missions conference, and maybe there's somebody out there that God is tugging on their heart to saying, I want to be able to send you. But first thought cannot be, well, Lord, where do you want to send me? It just has to be, Lord, if you want me to go, I'll go. And that's how we have to be in our heart, because it's that type of obedience, that Abraham that then caused the rest of the earth to be blessed, as he said. I will bless them that bless you, and curse them that curse thee, and all the earth will be blessed. Why? Because Abraham got out of his home, stepped out of his comfort zone, and left. That's, again, when we step out of what we deem as our comfort zone, and sometimes it's our own house, and go out and just do something for the Lord blesses. Matter of fact, in Genesis 15, verse 5, it says, And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Now, look now towards heaven, and tell the stars if they be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. That his seed would be more than the stars. Why? Because he stepped out and went. And Christianity is not going to spread if we do not step out and go. Well, I'm just not that good at it. He didn't ask if you're good at it. He didn't say, Abraham, do you think you can be able to do this? Do you think you can step out and I can create a nation through you? Do you think you can go out and lead millions of people? Do you think you can do that? Because what would Abraham's answer probably be? You know what, Lord, I'm not sure that that's the best idea. You know, there was times when God's asked me to do things, and if he was, it wasn't, hey, Darin, what do you think? Because if I had to answer what I think, I'd have to tell him, Lord, I don't think that's the best idea. If you got anybody else that's better than me. Oh, yeah, I do. There's a bunch of them, but I'm still asking you. And like I said, because he stepped out and went, his seed was more than the stars. And because we had young people step out and go, even though everybody said this is, wars is dangerous. Wars is dangerous. Why would you go down there? Because they need Jesus. And because of that, people came to know Jesus as their Savior. Because people were willing to go. And that's how we all need to be. It's just, all right, Lord, I don't know where the money's going to come. I don't know how all things, but Lord, if you want me to go. And I believe that there's people that needed to be on that trip that didn't go. For fear. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I know there was people who wanted to be on the trip, but due to other circumstances, things happened. But how many times have we missed out on something because we just were worried? Instead of just going, all right, Lord, I'll go. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Like I said, I'm sure that wasn't on Abraham. So, man, are you sure, Lord, you want me to just pack up and go? Well, hang on. I'm going to have to sell my house. I'm going to have to get hold of a realtor, and I got to, pawn off all my stuff. And no, I just need you to pack up and go. And if God came along today and asked one of us to just go, what would our response be? You want me to go where? I don't speak that language, Lord. Me and you talked about this. I said Belize. They speak English. And it's warm there, and you want to send me to Siberia? Are you kidding me? What would we do? Hey, I need you to talk to that person. Ooh, that's the roughest one. Ooh, I can't. I think sometimes it's easier to go in the land where I don't know the language than it is to speak our own language. Because now we have an excuse. Instead of just saying, all right, Lord, let's see what happens. Because when we listen to God, what happens? They at least get the gospel. They can't say they've never heard. We need to go. We need to be like Abraham, just have faith. Because what is the opposite of fear? Faith. Lord, I'll go. If that's what you want me to do, and that's where I'll go. And I've been various places, and I got kicked out of Mexico 3 times in one day. It's a true story. I'm not going to get into it now. It's another time, another place. I still blame that on Pastor Ken Kerr. It was his idea for us to carry things into Mexico, and it was a Sunday, and they wanted us to pay duty, and we were trying to get in without paying. That was the missionary told us to. Now try this gate. And they kicked us out of that entrance, and they kicked us out of that entrance, and they kicked... Until finally I said, no. Let's go get a hotel, and we'll try this again tomorrow. But, go. And you know what? It was funny. The entire time, it wasn't the fact that the Mexicans weren't happy with us. It was the fact that it was taking us 45 minutes each time to circle around and come back, and I was getting tired. But I never felt at all that I was in trouble. When I got back on the American side one time and all the Americans had automatic weapons pointed at us, a little bit nervous at that point, I have to admit. But it was all good because why? God was in it. And I believe he was teaching us to just have faith. I got you. And we just followed our instructions, and God got us all through. But again, even when we were in an area that they deemed to be extra dangerous, I never felt unsafe. Why? Because Jesus Christ was with us. And it wasn't even the, you know what, if I die today, I'm going to heaven. I knew God was going to get us in and out of there in one piece. That's the comfort we should be able to have. Because, again, why would God not want us there? He wants us sharing the gospel. And you know what? As long as he has purpose for us, he'll keep getting us wherever we need to go. But he needs us to just be willing. My second person I want to talk about is Moses. Now, Moses was a little reluctant. And he, there's times in the Bible when they still question God, but God was able to use them. But Exodus chapter 3 and verse 7. Exodus 3, verse 7, and it said, And the Lord said, I have surely seen the afflictions of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmaster, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land into a good land, and a good land and a large, and unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So here he's talking to Moses, and he's laying out his game plan for him. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to send you in. I've heard the cry of my people, and I'm going to send you in. Now, if we know the backstory of Moses, he was in the land of Egypt, and he was living in the king's palace. He was plucked out by Pharaoh's daughter. I got to get my story straight. There was some gal that plucked him out of the river, and that's southern. But here he was living in a palace, and God started playing on his heart, and he slew one of the Egyptians, and he fled. And now he's out on the backside of the desert, tending to the sheep, minding his own business, when lo and behold, God comes to him. And it's those times when we're just out doing nothing, and God starts speaking to us. Listen, if you never hear God speak to you, maybe sometime you just need to get on the backside of the desert where it's quiet. And like I said, that's why I love mornings down there and just walking around and just listening to God. Because a lot of times that's when God can do the most talking, when everything is quiet. Quiet down within yourself and just listen to God and have God tell you, all right, here's what I need you to do. Now, we know that Moses wasn't thrilled with the plan in the beginning. Lord, you can't send me. Because I'm sure he's thinking, I go back there and I'm a dead man. They are not going to be pleased to see me. And Lord, I'm just not that good at speech. That's my favorite part. Lord, I'm not that good at speech. And God said, I'll tell you what to say. Don't worry about it. Lord, you just don't. I'll send you Aaron. And how much speaking did Aaron do? He did none. Moses did it all. But it's just go. We don't have to have reasons why. We can just go because the Lord can do anything that he needs to do if we just allow him. And because of that, what happened? Israel was freed from Egypt. And how many people out there under bondage of this world and sin, and they need somebody to go out there and show them Jesus Christ. Just go out there and tell them, this is Jesus Christ, and this is what he has for you and wants for you. But he needs somebody to go. And again, sometimes going out and doing these things is not the easiest. Well, I'm not very eloquent at speech. Well, Lord, I'm not that knowledgeable. What if they know something about the Bible that I don't? I'm sure they do. May not be right, but somebody needs to take them the truth, and I need you to go. I'll give you the words. Don't worry about it. But I believe a lot of times we don't think that God can do it because of who we are. Lord, I'm not the person to go out there and lead a nation. Well, all I need you to lead a few people to the Lord. I'll take care of the nation. I just need you to go. Step out and go. And if God's with us, then it's going to be okay. I've been on, like I said, I don't know how many times I've been down to El Paso down there on the trips. Started out going down there with Pastor Jerry with the teens, and that's what happens when you get your CDL. But I've been on many a time, and there's been trips down there and usually all of our problems do not lie at the border. They lie in the panhandle of Texas. That's where our problems happen. But God always takes care of everything. I mean, truly, just amazing. Like I said, the story when we broke down for 12 hours or something. And the bus had some catastrophic failure and it blew the water out. The fuel pump out of it, which is inside the motor. But where did we break down at? A Love's truck stop. Not in the middle of the panhandle in nowhere, Texas. And believe me, there's a lot of nowhere, Texas. We drive through a lot of nowhere, New Mexico. I mean, when it's 300 miles in between cities. And when you get there, they're closed anyway because we're driving in the middle of the night. We were right where we were taken care of because God's in it. Never said it was going to be comfortable, but God would take care of it. And he always does. And that's the thing. The more you do these things, the more you see God at work. And the more you step out of what you deem as your comfort zone, the larger your comfort zone gets. To the point it's, Lord, wherever you want to send me, that's where I'll go. Lord, you want me to go out and lead a nation? Think you lost your mind, but let's go. No, I never said that to God, and I don't ever recommend it. But remember, he knows our thoughts. I mean, with Jesus not walking around with the folks after his resurrection and perceived their thoughts, he just wants us to trust him and just go. And then see what happens when we trust God. Again, we went down there with a few people and we saw salvations. Why? Because we went. Because we didn't let anybody else stop us or say, you know what? And as leaders, we have to, as leaders, we're responsible for everybody. And say, you know what? I'm sorry, Hector, we're not going to allow our kids to go across the border because something could happen to them. You know what could happen to them? God could touch their hearts. Do I want anything to happen to them physically? No. And we do our best to make sure nothing does. But I want God to be able to use them, and I want them to be able to trust God. And sometimes that's what they need to see. Everybody said this was dangerous. God took care of it. And just be willing to go. Hey, if God tells you to go, go. Because you know what? It may be one of those teenagers that ends up on the missions field, and one day we're deciding, as they're up here speaking to us, that we're going to support them. I hope so. I pray that God can get a hold and use one of them or multiple of them. And not just the missions field, but anywhere. So, again, to be willing and not let our fears of what's going to take place. Because like I said, I'm sure Moses had some serious, and I'm not saying these aren't unwarranted fears. But if God asks you to go back and to go, we need to go and then see what God can do. I mean, you look at what happened. He led out the nation of Israel out of Egypt. Pharaoh gets mad, comes after him. And God takes care of them. Why? Because Moses left the backside of the desert and did as God asked him to do. There are people that need to see Jesus Christ work. And the only way they're going to see them is through you and I. We have to be willing to go. Turn to Esther, chapter 2. Queen Esther. Now here is, you got Esther. She is an Israel, a Hebrew. She's living in a nation that's not of her people. Esther chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 5. And so she's already kind of off, and she's off on her own. This isn't her homeland. This isn't her people. This is a new thing to her. But she finds favor in the sight of the king because he was mad at his queen at the time and needed a new one. And he saw Esther. I'm paraphrasing this, really. It's kind of the condensed version. But in Esther 2:5 it says, "Now in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up to Hadeshah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, who Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took her for his own daughter. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and decree was heard, there were many and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also into the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meant to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. And Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. She didn't tell everybody who she was, in other words. Keep your mouth closed. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did, and what would become of her. He was worried about her. Like I said, she wasn't part of these people. She was an outsider brought in. So he said, don't talk about your world. Just go in there, be quiet, and do your thing. So he would check on her daily. Now, when every maid's turn was come into going into the king, boy, I'm having a rough time pronouncing all these names tonight. God, I didn't live back then. That name right there, after she had been 12 months, according to the manner of women, for so were the days of the purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odor, and with other things for the purifying of the women. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whosoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. And in the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Sheshagas, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. And she said unto the king, and she came into the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she was called by name. Now, again, long story short, she's found favor in the king. But even still, we'll see, you still have to be careful. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, had taken her for his daughter, was come and go unto the king, she required nothing but that Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto the king Azarias, into the house royal in the 10th month, and in the 10th month Tebeth, and in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women. She obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made the great feast unto all the princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the province and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So here he is. She's come into the king, and she's now got favor. So she's now the queen. And so she came out of where she was. Now she's in the palace. For lack of a better term, she was nobody before, but now she's queen. But even still, I'm sure this is very uncomfortable for her, because she went from basically just being a normal person out here in the world to the queen. And when you really think about it, I mean, look at this picture, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper here in what goes on, is we know that she will eventually have to go before the king, and you can't go in, and nobody could just go see the king. If he didn't invite you, the decree was, if you came in before the king, you weren't invited, you died. I mean, just plain and simple. And things are going bad for her people, so they're going to need her to talk to the king. And at first she's thinking, no. But as we would read, if we read all of Esther and studied it out, that she was there for a reason, for such a time as this. In Esther 4:16, it says, "Go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast for ye me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai, he's in trouble, and he asked her to go before the king and save him and the people. And finally she says, "Listen, all right, pray for me, and I'll go. And if he kills me, he kills me." If you know you're going to go somewhere and it's life or death, if you go there, you could die. That's stepping out of your comfort zone. I don't know about you all, but I set out every day to make it all the way through and wake up the next morning. That is my goal. Always has been, always will be. I set out to remain living. And I try to refrain from anything that's going to get me killed. I've never jumped out of an airplane, even though they tell me, most people live through that. But still, there's that chance. And God has never instructed me to jump out of an airplane. Now, if God said, "I need you to jump out of an airplane for me," first I'll ask, why? What is this going to do? No, but then I'll go. But he's never commanded me to jump out of an airplane. There's certain things I don't do. But, again, if God is asking us to go somewhere, then he has a purpose. And he's not saying, all right, I want you to go because they're going to kill you. I want you to go because they need to hear from me. So she eventually was willing to get up and go. And say, you know what? If I perish, I perish. And that's the attitude we have to have as Christians. I'll do what I have to do. Because ultimately, I know whose hands I'm in. And if something happens and we do go down to some place and I perish, then I will wake up in the arms of Jesus Christ. Not what I set out to do that day, but that's what I'll do. That's the attitude we have to have. But how many times do the what we believe and know and say, well, I can't do that. The king has said, if I go into, that's his decree. He has to kill me if I go into him unannounced. If he hasn't invited me, I have to go. I can't go. Well, I need you to go. And like I said, a lot of times we look at things and say, well, you know what, if I do this, I can't, like I said, I can't speak the language. And I have no doubt that if God called me to Siberia, that he would give me the ability to speak the language, or he would give me somebody that does. Because if he's asked me to go, he has a purpose. And I believe he wants all of us to just be willing to do as God's asked us to do. Not let fear or anything else get in our way, because that's when all of a sudden now we miss out on what God's trying to do. Because what did God do? She didn't die, I'll tell you that. And she saved her people. Listen, we have people that need saved. And we cannot let fear stop us. Well, it's dangerous. You know what? I hear about murders all the time around here. It's dangerous right here. But if God's sending us, God will take care of us. Again, our comfort zone should be wherever God is and doing what He's asked me to do. Because sometimes I don't think we realize in our life when we have our struggles, God's trying to get us to do something, but we don't do it. You know, I've told you the story of me fighting with God for a year before I retired and came to work for the church. And that was the most uncomfortable year of my life. I've had years that were tough. I've had ministry opportunities that were tough. I remember taking over the youth when others thought that they should have the youth. It was a tough time. It was a good time. God took care of it. But that year that I fought with God was just horrible. And I implore you all, don't do it. Don't fight with God. If God asks you to do it, just do it. Amen. That'll be my testimony. Do what God says. Because He will make it very comfortable in your comfort zone. Because that's what I was comfortable doing, what I was doing. I go to work every day, and I know what's going to happen. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to deal with people. We're going to get product out. I'm going to get paid. Every day. Every day is a little bit different, but it's always the same. Now, you want me to step away from that and what I know, and I know that once a month, I got paid monthly then, that I'm going to get a paycheck, to I'm not going to get a paycheck. Lord, you got the wrong guy. And I did. I told Him one day, I fought with Him for just a solid hour of why He could not use me. I'm just thankful that God didn't say, then I'm going to get somebody else. Because He could have easily did that. Am I saying that I brought some great change here? No. It brought great change here. To the point that now I'm willing to do more for Him because I know what He does for me. Amen. That's where the change comes. Sometimes that's what we miss out on. It isn't the big change, you know, I'm not going to save a nation. He's not going to make of me a mighty nation that's more than the stars. I got to be honest with you, I don't want that many kids. I can't afford that many grandkids. But what He did right here in my life, because I was willing to listen. And that's sometimes what we miss out of. And we miss out on seeing what God is doing in our lives, what God wants to do. And just be willing to step out and go. And say, Lord, if that's what you're asking, that's what we'll do. Next, Peter. Turn to Matthew chapter 14. Peter, he's one of my favorite people in the Bible. Why? I mean, Peter's willing to jump up and do just about anything. Now, he's not always the best at it, but he's willing. I mean, Pastor Jerry talked about the other day, talking about Peter, and at least he was, and I think it was on a Wednesday night. But, and we fault him for taking his eyes off of Jesus and sinking, but at least he got up out of the water. I mean, how many of us would even thought that? That wouldn't even cross my mind. Lord, you asked me to step out on the water, and I'll do it. Lord, if you'll come to me, then I'll open up a spot for you. That's more like what we would think and do. Instead of saying, Lord, I'll come to you. We want Him to come to us. Peter was willing to go to Him. And like I said, Peter, he was always very, if anybody was willing to step up and ask questions, it was always Peter. And and God didn't get mad at him. Jesus didn't get mad at him. Peter, how many times are you going to ask questions? Just get up and... He answered him. And I believe that's helped Peter to be who he was when it came time for the ministry. But in Matthew 14, verse 22, it says, straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent the multitude away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But when the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with the waves, for the wind was contrary, and in the fourth watch of the night Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come unto thee on the water. And he said, come. And when Peter came down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Remember, he walked on water. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and he began to sink, and he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hands and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth thou art the Son of God. So you have the story. Here he is. He gets out, and he goes. Yes, at one point he took his eyes off it, and he started to sink. But he got out and went. And you know what? Going out and doing things for Jesus isn't always going to be the easiest, and it's not always going to work out. But we can't let that stop us. Peter didn't say after that, Lord, you can't use me because I'm a man of little faith. No, he became a man of great faith. Take these things, learn from these things, and get more faith. Because when he did start to sink, what happened? Jesus stretched forth his hand and plucked him out of the water. You know what? When we're going out there in the name of Jesus, we are not going alone. If Jesus sends us somewhere, he's going with us. And it's not, Lord, if you want me to just go out and walk on water, bid me to go. It's, Lord, bid me to come to you. And Lord, wherever you want me to go, as long as you're there, that's where I want to be. And if you're not there, I don't want to be there. But if you need me to go, then I will go. And be willing to just step out and not worry about, what if I start to sink? It's crazy out there, Lord. It's dangerous out there. What am I going to eat? I need food. I'll provide it. I'll take care of you. Why? If Jesus asks you to go, he will provide for you. He always does. There's never a time in here when you read that Jesus said, all right, Abram, you go. Now you're going to have to provide for yourself. I mean, he even told his apostles, take nothing. Matter of fact, you just go and you take nothing. Why? Because at that point, they were going to have to rely on him solely. Because sometimes our comfort zone is knowing that I have what I need. You know what? It's easy to step out when you know that I've got the funds. It's easy to step out and go and you know I can afford to eat. But sometimes we need to step out in faith and say, Lord, if you've asked me to go, I don't know where it's going to come from, but I can't wait to see what you're going to do. I can't wait to see you provide and take care of everything. Because that's what he does. Again, if he's asked you to go, he'll take care of it. And that's what we see right here. Did he take care of Peter? Absolutely. He plucked him up out of the water. And because of that faith, because of the faith that he eventually gained, what happened on the day of Pentecost? Matter of fact, let's look. Acts chapter 2. Verse 14. This is the same Peter that on the day of the crucifixion said, I don't know him, and denied him thrice. Now, he's standing up on the day of Pentecost, Acts chapter 2, verse 14. We're going to read verse 14, and we're going to drop down to verse 22. But it says, But Peter, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice, and said unto them, Ye men of Judah, and all ye that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken unto me, saying, hey, listen to me. Before he was like, I don't know him, but because of the faith that he grew, because he was willing to step out of the boat, because he was willing to trust Jesus, now he's standing up before all them that crucified Jesus and say, listen to me. Verse 22. Ye men of Israel, hear these words, Jesus of Nazareth, a man approved of God among you by miracles and wonders and signs, which God did by him in the midst of you, as ye yourself also know. Him, being delivered by a determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God, ye have taken, and by wicked hands have crucified and slain. Verse 41. Then they that gladly received his words were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. Why? Because Peter was willing to stand up and preach to a crowd Jesus Christ, whom they just crucified. Amen. And how many times, as you read through the book of Acts, do they address them as you all who crucified Jesus? Knowing that this was not going to be a popular statement with the crowd. It's going out and saying, do you know that you've sinned? No, I don't sin. Have you ever told a lie? Little one. Have you ever taken something that wasn't yours? Piece of candy. You're a sinner. Because that's what they have to know. They have to know there's a reason for salvation. Peter not worrying about his own self, because he was willing to step out of the water and know that Jesus was plucked him up, because he was willing to trust Jesus. Look at all the souls that were added that day. When you think about those that stepped out on faith and went on to the mission field, let's just look at those that we support. How many souls have been added because of them? And not because of them, because they were willing to go and allow Jesus Christ to use them. I mean, I think about Kevin Wynn down in Mexico City, who, I got to give him props, because, there's many times that his family's been threatened. I don't know about him, but if you threaten me, that's one thing. But when now I've got to worry about my kids, that's different. But he stayed because he trusted Jesus. And because of that, and look what God has used through him. And this isn't put Kevin Wynn up on a pedestal. This is put Jesus Christ up on a pedestal. Because, folks, we are just vessels. Earthen vessels. We simply carry the truth. I didn't provide salvation. This church didn't provide salvation. Jesus Christ provided salvation. We just carry that message. And as vessels, we should not have a say in where we go or what we do. But how often do we take that say? Because we let something stop us. Lord, like I said, I can't speak, I can't speak a foreign language. I joke about Belize half-heartedly. And I would go if he asked me tomorrow. But I picked Belize. You know why? Again, they speak English. Because I've tried to learn Spanish. It doesn't work. It doesn't roll off my tongue. The English language has a hard time rolling off my tongue. But Spanish, I still laugh. Before there was that couple of years ago in 2019, me and Catherine went down to Argentina for a month. So I thought I need to learn some Spanish. So I downloaded me this app on my phone so I could learn Spanish. And it would say a phrase, and then I have to repeat it back. And if I did a good job, it would say good job. And it would say it, and I would repeat it back, and man, it sounded good in my head. And it would say, try again. Yeah. Catherine, it didn't sound anything like that. What are you talking about? So eventually I gave up, and I had Luke for my interpreter, because it just doesn't roll off my tongue. Because we look at these things and we base upon what we do and where we go based upon ourself and what's most comfortable. be it whatever the case may be. I can't speak the language. I don't know the culture. Do they have air conditioning? We listened to a missionary that was missionary to Mongolia. He said when he got to now he didn't speak the language. He said when he got to Mongolia, there were 6 inches of ice on the toilet seat he had to chip off before he could even go to the bathroom. But he's done great works, or God has done great works through him, and published in a language. He didn't graduate high school. He said, you know what, I couldn't read or write. But he went, and God used him to publish a Bible in the Mongolian language. Not because he did it, because he simply used him to gather people around him who could do it. He didn't say, Lord, I'm ignorant. I can't go. He said, okay, Lord, I'll go. And now the folks there around him have the Bible in their language because he simply said, I'll go. You know what? I don't know if God's trying to get anybody here tonight to go out on the mission field. Maybe not. But I do know he wants us to go out around us. I do know he wants us to step out on faith and be willing to give when needed. Like I said, we just came off our missions conference and we took up our, for Joash. And sometimes that's stepping out on faith. Lord, you're asking me to give this much. I don't know where it's going to come from. But that's what you want me to do. That's what I'll do. We have our Joash coming up. And Lord, what are you going to do through me? And then be willing to take it and listen and go. And not say, Lord, that's a lot of money. I can't do that. And he's going to say, you can't, but I can. Will you listen to me? And it's either yes or no. I will or I won't. And if we don't, and we don't listen to him, then he can't use us. I'm not saying giving to Joash is going to cause some great miracle within the church, but it can right here. Wow. God asked me to give this, didn't think it would happen, but he gave me the funds. And that caused you to have a little bit more faith until the point that one day he says, I need you to do something for me. And we say, all right, Lord, let's go. Let's do it. But I haven't told you. It doesn't matter. Because if you're in it, I want to be there. That's where we need to get to in life. I said, let's look at one more. We got plenty of time. Let's look at Paul. Acts chapter 8. Now in verses 1 through 3 of 8, let's actually drop down to chapter 9. This is where he meets Jesus on the road, or this is Saul, who was out consenting to kill the apostles and the stoning of Stephen and all them. So he's out persecuting the church. And now here in verse 9, again, here he is. This is Saul, the man out persecuting the church. In chapter 9, verse 1, it says, And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughters against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest and desired him a letter to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found in any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. So anybody that's in the way of Jesus Christ, anybody that's following Christ, he can bring them bound. And as he journeyed, he came near to Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven, and he fell to the earth, and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And he trembling and astonished said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, Rise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. And Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him unto Damascus. And he was there 3 days without sight, neither did eat nor drink. So here we got the whole story. Jesus has come to Saul now, and he's given him a mission. Again, This is Saul who's been persecuting the church. This is Saul who's been doing everything he can. He had Stephen stoned. So now you're telling me the ones that I've been persecuting, you want me to go to and tell them that the one I said, you do not follow him, you do not listen to them, I don't want to hear his name preached. Now you want me to go and preach that very name. Read your New Testament. He went. And he did exactly what Jesus asked him to do. And the effect that Jesus was able to have through Paul was amazing. How many churches were started? How many people came to know Jesus Christ simply because he didn't say, Lord, you've got the wrong guy. You know what? I'll quit persecuting your people and I'll step aside, but I'm not going to go out there and start preaching your name because they're going to think I'm a lunatic. They're going to think I've lost my mind. And now you want me to go and do that? How many of us look back at our past and say, Lord, I can't go into these people. They know who I am. Lord, you want me to go back to those that knew who I was and start preaching Jesus Christ? They're going to think I've lost my mind. No? Why, they might, but go talk to them anyway. Because you know what? It might just change their mind. Why? Because he simply went. Acts 17, verse 23, it says, For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, and this is when he's up on Mars Hill, and now he's walking around, he's checking things out, and he's seeing all the philosophers and all those preaching and teaching. He says, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. To the unknown God, him who you ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you. He went from do not listen to this, do not preach this name, to let me tell you about Jesus Christ. Because he didn't say, Lord, my comfort zone was going out and persecuting the church. And now you want me to quit doing that, which, okay, I'll do that, but now you want me to go out and you want me to preach the very name that I proclaim not to. Yes, that's what I need you to do. And next thing you know, he's standing up amongst all the scholars of the day, and he's saying, let me tell you about Jesus Christ. Let me tell you about my Lord. See, in all these instances, yes, you know what? Great things came of it. And when we as a church listen to God and do as we're told, great things come of it. It really does. You may not think it or see it, but one day we're going to get up to heaven. We're going to see what our actions caused. It's simply being willing to purchase paper for Bibles. Be willing to purchase a tractor trailer. And not buy the tractor trailer, but rent it. And send Scripture down to a place that most of us will never go to. And be willing to just do as God asks us to do. Because we got to remember, I used to always laugh when we'd be putting together John and Romans, and somebody would come and get your stack before you were 10. I'm counting because you're wanting to know, how many did I actually do? Church, let me tell you, we all did 100,000. You did 100,000, you did 100,000, you did 100,000. We all did 100,000. And then we're going to put legs to it down in Mexico City. And we're going to see, as Kevin Wynn told us in his video, literally hundreds of thousands of people come to Jesus Christ. You were part of that. You were part of that. All of us were a part of that. Because we simply just took what God told us to do. And I believe he took Doc Demarest and he told us, church, I need you to now take that on and get it done. And like Pastor always says, before he could tell him no, he died. So now we're stuck with it. Because that's what Jesus Christ wants us to do. And he wants us to just be willing to go And don't always look at what is the outcome, because sometimes we'll never know this side of heaven. But the more and more we do for Jesus Christ, the more faith we gain right here. To the one day that he will say, or maybe say, I need you to go. How old was Abram? 75. Don't think he'll quit using any of us. As long as we're walking on this earth, he has a plan.
Amen.
And let's be willing to just step out and say, Lord, whatever you want. Where's my comfort zone? Wherever you are. And if you're not there, I don't want to be there. But no matter where you send me, that's what I'll do. Maybe it's go teach a Sunday school class. Maybe it's drive a bus. Whatever the case may be. Will you go? Yea, Lord. Bow your heads.